Do you have a paranormal encounter you'd like to share with us? Send us an email with your story for a chance of it being featured on Weird World. As the first responders to situations which take a terrifying turn, it's not surprising that police officers possess some of the most spine-chilling modern-day paranormal stories ever told. In this video, we present two unnerving true stories of police encounters with the paranormal. Such accounts are abundant and demonstrate the frightening reality police face when dealing with these events. The reanimation. The first story is about an incident that occurred in rural Illinois. A cop and his colleague were on night duty, which was typically uneventful, with just a few noisy drunks and fast cars to take care of. They received a call about a possible break-in at the town's morgue. It was an unusual place to break into, but it had a lot of chemicals inside that might attract drug addicts. The cops responded to the call and went to the morgue to look into it. When they got there, they found the janitor waiting outside, looking a bit rattled. He told the cops that while he was mopping the floors, he noticed something moving in the corner of his eye. When he looked up, he saw someone sprint across the hallway and vanish into a room. Unfortunately, he couldn't provide a good description of the person, since he had turned off the lights while cleaning, but he was certain he saw someone, and since he was alone and unarmed, he decided to play it safe and call the police. The two cops thought it might have been a bunch of kids breaking in for fun, or maybe the janitor was just imagining things. But the janitor seemed so sure about what he had seen that the cops decided to check it out. They began by loudly warning anyone inside to come out, but the only response they got was their own voices echoing back. The cops and the janitor searched the whole building, walking down the main hallway with their hands on their weapons, checking each side room they came across. Most were labs for testing, while some were storage for tools or paperwork. They turned on the lights as they went so they wouldn't miss anyone hiding. One cop opened a door to a dark room and tried to find the light switch. Instead, he found an empty waiting room for family members of the deceased. He quickly searched the room, checking every possible hiding spot. While he did so, his partner suddenly yelled, "Hey, stop! Turn around!" The other cop faced back around to see his partner pointing his weapon towards the end of the hallway. "She went around the corner," he said, pointing to the left side at the end of the hall. "There's no way out from there," the janitor explained. Realizing they had the trespasser trapped, the officers moved down the hallway, shouting out to the woman, assuring her of safety if she came out and gave herself up. The first officer went to the end of the hallway and peeked around the corner, seeing the woman standing there. The lights were off in that part of the building, allowing him to see only a vague outline of her and her long, light-coloured hair. Hoping to talk her into leaving with them peacefully, he stepped out from behind the corner. However, as soon as she saw him, she quickly opened a large grey door behind her, ran through it, and slammed it shut. The officer rushed to the door, but found it locked. He pounded on it for a while and called out for the woman to reveal herself, but there was no answer. His partner and the janitor joined him, and he explained the situation, which seemed to worry the janitor. Apparently, the door shouldn't have been able to lock from the inside. The janitor unlocked it, and the two officers entered with their weapons drawn. As they shone their flashlights around the room, everything was normal, with no sign of anyone having just been there just a couple of minutes earlier. The room felt eerie in the dim light, and one officer thought it was unusually cold, even for a morgue. The janitor followed them in and turned on the lights, illuminating the room. It was mostly empty, with some workspaces bordering one wall, equipment along another, and two cadaver gurneys in the centre of the room. One gurney had a sheet over it, with a body shape beneath it. It would have been a smart hiding spot if the room were used more often, but as it stood, the officers knew they had found their suspect. The devil's eyes. The police were called to a report of domestic violence in a low-income inner-city area of the United States, an area known for high levels of drug violence, prostitution, theft and human trafficking. The call was made by neighbours in an apartment complex who had heard screams and loud banging. When the police arrived at the scene, they found 7 people, mostly from the families living in the complex, silently praying on the grass. The officers heard them whispering, as if they didn't want to disturb anyone. When the officers asked what they were doing, one person replied, "Praying for our souls." This response unnerved the officers and set the stage for what they were about to encounter. They went inside the apartment where they were told to go to a room where a family member was supposedly possessed. Doubtful and suspecting a drug-related issue, the officers proceeded to check the situation. As they approached the door, they could hear multiple voices, even though they were told there was only one man inside, shouting in languages the officers couldn't identify. Feeling that the situation was beyond their capabilities, the lead officer called for backup and EMTs to handle a potentially severe psychological incident. While waiting for reinforcements, the officers questioned the family about the man. They said he had been acting strangely for weeks, growing increasingly anxious and irritable over trivial matters and appearing progressively more worn out and sickly. About 30 minutes before the police arrived, he had started screaming that he was going to devour his family and would be torn from earth back to hell because he had broken the agreement. After this, he began pleading with the Virgin Mary for salvation, and then started frothing at the mouth and blistering his skin with holy candles. The family was able to restrain him and move him to another room, but his violence escalated to the point where they couldn't control him. One family member claimed they had given up when the man climbed the walls onto the ceiling. As the family recounted the story, the man continued to shriek in unfamiliar languages, so loudly that it was causing the walls to tremble. All the officers involved in the incident were seasoned veterans of the force, but by this point many of them were starting to feel uneasy. One officer even clutched a rosary for comfort, while the rest simply did their best to keep their fear in check. Upon the EMTs and police backup arriving, they went upstairs with the officers to the man's room. The door was locked, so they had to break it down. Inside, they found a completely dishevelled room with almost everything overturned and covered in a bloody foam from the man's mouth. The only light source was a desk lamp, casting eerie shadows of strange shapes that appeared to change when looked at. Once the officers confirmed that no one else was in the room, the EMTs approached the man, who was crouching in a corner like a predator over its prey, mumbling to an unseen entity. When a medic called his name, the man raised his head in a manner resembling a dog, seemingly unaware of his actions. Some officers instinctively reached for their weapons, sensing potential danger. Despite being unsettled, the medic calmly asked the man how he felt. The man grinned and replied in Spanish, "When I'm done with you, even God won't recognize you." At that moment, the officers and medics unanimously decided to take the man into custody swiftly. As they discussed their plan, the man stood up, breathing heavily. His body bore burns, scratches, evidence of self-inflicted harm, and his chest was smeared with bloody foam from his mouth. He smirked once more, glancing at the rosary an officer had around his neck. "That trinket won't save you," he said, before charging at them. Though outnumbered, the man put up a fierce fight. The first officer tackled him to the ground, while others joined in, trying to restrain him with their combined weight. The man fought ferociously, clawing, punching, and thrashing like a trapped animal, all the while screaming. Finally, they subdued him enough for a medic to prepare a sedative. As the medic readied the syringe, the lead officer, who was pinning the man's arms above his head, locked eyes with him. The officer cried out in terror, recoiling as if repulsed by something horrific. The man ceased struggling, let out a bone-chilling laugh, and told the officer, "Look closely so you don't forget." Once sedated, they placed the man on a stretcher, secured him, and carried him to the ambulance. The visibly shaken officer, who had locked eyes with the man, opted to accompany in a patrol car instead of riding in the ambulance. Another officer, who assisted the medics, confessed that he never let go of his weapon during the entire trip. Upon arriving at the hospital, the officer who had locked eyes sought solace in the chapel to pray. Later, when asked by a colleague about what he had seen, he said, "His eyes weren't human. I know what I saw. I've never seen anyone with eyes like that. It was like looking into the eyes of the devil."